Hey, welcome back to the Front Door Church podcast. My name's Dave Shrine. You're still Justin Trapp.
I still am, I think.
Yeah. This is episode 3. We're going to be talking all about email marketing. I want to go back to something that we discussed in our first episode. I think I'm a little bit impressed with myself, so you can just tell me to be quiet if I need to. But
Is it something you said?
It is something I said.
Man.
And so this idea of we've always looked at the front door of the church as once they get into the front door, then the ministry can begin. Then we can start to serve them. Then we can start to reach them. And what I'm finding in these first couple episodes, and I hope we build on in this one, is the idea that no, the front door needs to be extended out way beyond a physical front door that exists. And there needs to be that opening of ministry and discipleship opportunities happening way before somebody ever steps in to the church facility. I mean, do you feel like that's a good indication of what needs to happen in order to increase visitors and make disciples?
Well, we were saying that not everyone that comes to your church website is ready to plan a visit.
Right.
They're not ready to attend. And so if you don't have opportunities to connect with them outside of the context of a service, then you're really, really missing out. And so that leads us to email and how you can leverage email to connect with people, to disciple people, to follow up with people in a way that's meaningful and perhaps probably spiritual as well. All roads are leading to gathering together to worship. You know, we're not saying your church service isn't important. All roads lead that direction, but there are many things that you can do in the meantime. And, you know, I'll say this, there's several things that we could talk about on why email is important and why churches should be leveraging email a lot more than you already are. Because if you're watching this or listening to this, you've probably sent out some church emails. But what we're saying is you should actually leverage email a lot more than you already are. And one of the reasons why is, this isn't the main reason, but let's just talk about it. So you mentioned in one of the previous episodes that if you build your platform on Instagram, or you build your platform on TikTok, or you work years and years to have this your church's page on Facebook or your profile, and then all of the sudden the algorithm changes, and they have been changing, right, for a long time. Or they decide, hey, this denomination or this people group or this churches in general, and this is an extreme example, but we no longer want you to have, it could be a political issue, right? They could throttle your Facebook.
Well, let me stop you right there. We talked about Facebook ads in our previous episode. Being someone who runs Facebook ads, in 2018, 2017, somewhere around there after the 2016 election, there were all sorts of accusations being thrown at
Cambridge
Facebook. Cambridge Analytica. Yeah, there was all sorts of issues with the way Facebook was facilitating ads. And one of the things that they wound up doing was removing certain criteria that you could target, such as ethnicity, such as income, such as all sorts of unique identifiers. And so either they removed it or they cascaded back and you could only access it in certain areas. But what they did after that was they marked certain areas as special categories. And so you can no longer run ads that advertise housing as a general Facebook ad. You have to indicate that it's a special category. And when you do that, a large percentage of the tools and targeting options that were available to you before are now gone.
There's nothing you can do about it.
There's nothing you can do about it. And when you say this is a political ad, a lot of options are now gone. When you say this is an employment ad, you lose a large majority of targeting options, and you can no longer dial in your ads the way that it was. So you're saying this is an extreme example. I'm saying, no, that's already happening.
Yeah. What about when it's a religious ad?
Exactly.
Right. So you've become dependent upon these tools on the different social media platforms. So all of a sudden you no longer have access to your page, or you've been suspended, or you don't have access to the features you used to have. And it reminds me of the biblical analogy, right? The parable of the building your house on sand versus a stable foundation, right? If you're building your platform, your house on social media platforms, we're not saying you shouldn't, but if that's who you are largely depending on to reach people digitally, then in the long game, you're going to fall short. And so email provides that safe haven, right? Because you own these email addresses. These email addresses, you have this list, it's your list, and you are building a platform, a community engagement, essentially, on land that you own. You haven't built a house on somebody else's property, and now they want you to pay up, or they're saying, hey, get off my land.
Mm-hmm.
And you've worked years on that house. You're actually, an email list provides you some stability long-term. And to be honest, it's actually more effective.
It's way more effective. Let me give you guys an example. When we host any type of event for whether it's Front Door, Ministry Pass, Sermonary, anything of any of the companies that we're affiliated with, whenever we host an event, we'll put some ads out there. We'll post it on social media. But the majority of registrations for the webinar, the workshop, the event, they come from our email list. We know that we are not going to get very many registrations coming in from people just showing up on our website or clicking on our social media ads. We know that the bulk of the registrations are going to come from people who we've been communicating with and building relationship through email over the last several weeks, months, years.
And why do you think that's the case?
Well, number one, because we have been building, like I said, we've been building a relationship with
familiarity.
them. The familiarity.
Trust.
So that's the first thing. It's not the first time that they're ever hearing us out of the blue. But number two, it's because, I think, I don't know what answer you're looking for, but I think the number two reason would be we already know that they're interested in this particular type of content, in this particular type. You're a pastor. If we host an event that says we are going to teach pastors how to run Facebook ads, we know that pastors who are on the list for Ministry Pass or Sermonary, they're in a position to where they need to run Facebook ads. So I don't know if that's the direction you were going to go,
for sure.
but there's a higher level of interest in that email list because they came on for a specific reason that is related to what it is we do. And so I don't want to get too far away from the scenario that we're talking about here with your church, but the idea that if you're going to host a big Christmas event or a large Easter event, let's say you're like my church, and there's going to be a change in service times and there's going to be a change in location for Easter. You can say every single Sunday, all of the Sundays leading up to Easter, we are doing an outside Easter service. You need to bring your own chairs. You can say it over and over and over again. However, there's going to be a large number of people who don't show up to hear that message. And let's say, okay, we're going to say we've got 4 weeks leading up. We're going to say it on 4 weeks out. We're going to skip the third week out. We're going to say it the last 2 weeks out. Well, what if somebody shows up just to that third week out and not the other 3 weeks? Well, they've missed the announcement. Here's why emails matter. All of a sudden, you can send out one message, hit everybody in your church if you've been prioritizing getting them on the list. Everybody in one message, you know that they've received it, and then you can send it out again to a second time to people who didn't open up the first time. You are in control of the narrative rather than Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or wherever you're trying to get your message out on, rather than their algorithm being in control of the message.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's important that churches begin to use email more intentionally and strategically when it comes to your events, reaching people. We've talked about, someone comes to your site and you offer a free resource. You have that automated email sequence happening. Maybe it's 3 emails, maybe it's 6 emails over 30 days, whatever the case may be. Those types of endeavors are important. And right now, what we see is a lot of churches are just doing a mass broadcast about what, services or what's going on. If you can just dig in a little bit into email automations and just email segmenting, and I'll let you talk about segmenting, getting a little tactical here, you can actually have more precision with your messaging and being more focused on, hey, let's send an email out to all the ladies for the ladies Bible study, but let's exclude all the men from the, you can do that if you have the data and you're intentional about it. Otherwise, like, you know, if my wife is dependent upon me to tell her about the ladies' Bible study, like,
It ain't going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
So let's talk a little bit about segmentation, and let's get rid of the word segmentation and let's just change it to groups. There are different groups of people. People fall into different categories. The most natural groups that you can set up in your church: number 1, student ministry. Number 2, women's ministry.
Kids ministry.
Number 3, kids ministry, men's ministry, special needs ministry. At my church, there is a group of women who they do quilt. It's a quilting ministry, and they make unique, one-of-a-kind quilts with scriptures, and just things that are encouraging for those who are going through medical conditions, who just have some medical issues going on. They deliver these handmade quilts to encourage people through that season. It's really, really cool stuff. But you've got all these different groups that are segmented already in your ministry. Now, when I stepped into a communications role, I wanted to start leveraging email. The problem is that everybody else wants to leverage email as well. What's unique about the church, and there's so many things that I think we can do better as far as marketing, but there's one area where I think the church does better than just about any other industry, and that is with their church databases. Inside of their church databases, you have everything you need to know about someone. You have more data than you realize it. You didn't think you were big data, but you're actually big data. You're big tech, because you know,
like their wills and stuff.
You got everything in there. So you know how many Sundays they show up.
Yeah.
You know their giving information, whether they've given or not. And then obviously certain people in the church know numbers, but you can run a report whether or not somebody has made a contribution to a specific campaign. You have information about small groups. What small group are they a part of? If your small groups are taking attendance, you have attendance records there. You've got those are just 3 examples. You've got all sorts of data. So here's what I want you to begin considering. First and foremost, just get it in your mind that your website is not as important as your email planning. I'll say it again. What you have on your website is not nearly as important as what you do in terms of emailing your congregation. So let's take an example. Let's say that we're coming up on Christmas because there's a lot of things going on. What are a few events that we might encounter? Obviously, Christmas Eve. Yes. We might be doing something for Advent.
Sometimes the small groups do like the drive-by. Our church has done it before, where you go visit all the small groups in one night, but you're only staying for like a few minutes, and you're getting refreshments.
Yeah.
Sort of drive-by type thing.
Yeah.
Christmas parties. Volunteer appreciation. Sometimes you have that at the end of the year.
There's I know one of my best friends, his church in California, they do a Advent candlelit dinner, I think is what it is. And the women's ministry puts that on, and it's each table has a woman host, has a female host, and then they bring all their friends. So there's all these different events.
Candlelight communion. There's lots of different, one of the churches I was at did a midnight mass for Christmas Eve. In the midnight hour, will we go? Sorry, Michael.
We only have so much time.
Yeah.
We only have so much time. So there's lots of different events happening. Now, you'll have the children's ministry leader come up and say, hey, we're doing an event. We're doing a play where all the children are I want to email the whole church. I say, okay, you want to email the whole church about the children's ministry. Well, how about we just email it to the people who we have emails for? Well, how would we do that? Well, let's go into the church database. Let's run a report. Show me parents of children who have checked in between September and the current date for at least one Sunday. So number 1, we're going to get all of the parents. So we're not going to wind up sending it, at least not intentionally, to people who don't have children. Number 2, let's say that somebody hasn't attended service in the last year. We're not going to include them on this particular one because it wouldn't be an appropriate event to invite them to, at least in our example category here, to invite them to and say, hey, come back to our church here. No, it's for the people who have been there and whose kids are in the play. So now we've eliminated people who that message is just going to be noise to. And then finally, we're able to pull a report on who has kids, who has attended. And then finally, we're able to drill down even further and say, maybe we only want to show it to people who have had their second visit, not their first visit, but their second visit or more in the last 6 months. That way you don't send it out to people who visited one time in September and haven't been back since. Now you've created a group. The formal term is segmentation, but you've created a group of people that are going to be highly receptive to that message. And when we have, what are some of the metrics that we can anticipate seeing when we dial in a specific group like that and send out an email? What does that mean for our metrics? What does that mean for getting our message out?
Well, it's going to be more effective because it's more precise. It's more focused. And here's another byproduct of this. When you are segmenting or grouping your email messages to very particular set of people, what it does for the people that you've excluded, right, is it actually helps when you send out emails to the people you've excluded the next time related to them, your message will be more effective than if they're getting lots of, we tend to tune out as humans, right?
Yeah.
The brain wants to learn how to work smarter and more efficient all the time. And if we're getting emails all the time, if your church is sending out emails to you all the time and most of it is not relevant to you, what do? You just tune it out, every email. And
there's a very clear tune out button too. It looks like a trash can. Boom.
Yeah, right. And so by segmenting, you're actually creating, you're improving your effectiveness as a communications strategy to everyone, not just the people you've targeted for the children's event.
And so now what you've done, like Justin said, is you've now opened up the door to be able to send more messages, not because you're sending more messages to the same person, but because you're sending more messages to smaller groups of people. And in that, you're going to get a greater growth rate in terms of your program registration. So let's take a winter camp coming up. Okay. Let's take student ministry winter camp. Now there's a part of you, pastor, that will probably say, well, I want folks to be praying for our students. And I'll tell you how you can handle that.
That's such
in
a
few
pastorly
minutes.
thing
It
to
is.
say.
I want our folks to be praying for our students. There's a great way to handle that. So if I forget to bring it up, bring me back around to it.
Prayer. Gotcha.
That's right. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to your church database. You're going to run a report and you're going to say, show me all of the parents of kids who have registered for any type of student event in the last 12 months. Show me the parents of any students who have attended 3 or more times. Show me the parents for any student who has registered for a winter camp, summer camp, or mission trip in the last 2 years. And all of a sudden, you have a collection of people who have demonstrated by past participation, you've created a group that you can then target and say, we have a winter camp coming up. We know this is the sort of thing that you look forward to, and we'd hope that you would join us this year, and then you can go through the details. But you've excluded parents who don't have teenage kids. You've excluded grandmas and grandpas who are not the primary decision makers for the teenagers. And you've excluded people in your church who are either single or don't have kids at all. So you've actually created a higher level of engagement, just like we did in our children's example. And now I'm coming back to the prayer part.
Prayer, yeah. You're going straight to prayer group, aren't you?
Straight to prayer. I'm going to blow people's minds. The way that you take little things like this that are very important but not relevant is you actually wrap it into a giant story. And so when you're talking about, hey, we've got winter camp coming up, you tell a story from last year, you tell them what you're excited for this year, and then you say, here is how it leans into our mission. And all of a sudden, you've just hit everybody else in the church with the information that's happening, but you've done it in a compelling way. So that's a little bit about segmentation. Now, I'm happy to talk as much as you want, but I know you brought up the automation piece. And the automation piece, just to define what we mean by automation, it is things happening that you have pre-programmed to happen, but you're not playing an active role in them executing each time they go. So talk a little bit about that automation piece, and let's talk about it first through the lens of automating, maybe giving away a free resource on a website. They show up to your homepage. It's Christmas time. Let's just go with Christmas time. It's not even close to it now, but let's just go with Christmas time. And we've got an Advent guide, how you can celebrate Christmas every Sunday before Christmas Day. So that maybe we put an Advent guide at the top. There's a ribbon. They opt in. What do we want to do as far as automating once we get that email address for the first time?
Well, we automate what's important. So if you have certain campaigns that are important, it's good to automate them, because automation trumps determination, right? It's like, hey, we want to send some emails out this fall, or we want to send some emails about the Advent thing. Well, if you can set it up and pre-schedule it out, then it's going to happen, right? And you can schedule out in a way that's optimum, not when you feel like it, or, hey, I'll get to it later this afternoon. You can have it to where it's going to be prime time when you see the most open rates for your emails, whatever the case may be. And what's really, really great about automation is you can actually move people through, you can take them on a journey in a way. You can tell a story. You can share things about, Advent. You can work through a devotional series, and it can all be pre-programmed in a way that's advantageous for the sequencing.
Oh, I see what you did then.
Man,
advantageous.
Man, I tried to hide it from you in the notes, but you, you saw it. So, and a lot of times too, you can use these automations and these campaigns to get people ready for something.
Yeah.
We at Ministry Pass, this is several years ago, when the first what was that movie? 50 Shades of Grey came out. Now, I promise I have not seen this.
Is this
movie.
an endorsement?
This is not an endorsement.
Not at all.
I have not seen this movie or movies. But when it was coming out, we wondered, like, it was this cultural phenomenon.
Opened up a big conversation.
It opened up a huge conversation. I was hearing about it on radio stations, and they were talking about reading the books, and now they're making this movie. And so what we did is we sent out a survey to our email list of pastors and churches, and we asked a simple question: should pastors preach or address pop cultural topics? Yes or no? And it was pretty overwhelming. Like 76% of pastors said, yes, you should preach on pop cultural issues. And so what we did on the second email is we said, hey, we asked you the survey. Here is what you guys said. Everyone said 76%. And then we had some few commentary items about it. And then in the third email, we addressed the big elephant in the room. Hey, there's this pop cultural phenomenon happening right now, this new movie that's coming out, and your people are probably going to be talking about it, at least some of them. There's water cooler, office talk. They're hearing it on the radio. I was certainly hearing it on the radio. Sports radio was talking about it. It was everywhere. It was kind of wild, to be honest with you. How
it permeated just about every area of culture for those several weeks that it was leading up to it and then came out. It was.
So I addressed that. And then I said, in our next email, we're going to be sharing something on how you can address what's happening in our culture and this conversation that is happening. The church can be a part of the conversation or not, and see what God's word says. How does the Bible inform this particular conversation that's happening in our culture? And on the fourth email, we ended up offering a product, a sermon series we called Shades of Grey, and it was really about sexual purity and relationships. And if we had just come out and just sent an email and sent the same email offering up this product, right, for this Shades of Grey sermon series, we probably had some people buy it just because, it's pastors. But the fact that we scheduled out these automations, we worked people through this journey, right, of saying, hey, and what you're doing is you're raising awareness, right? Because if there's no awareness of a problem, then if you're offering a solution to something that has no awareness, it's not going to be that effective. So we raised awareness about this issue, and then we offered a solution that could help pastors and churches address that problem. And I'm telling you, it was a record. We had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of churches. I think it was close to 500 churches actually purchased this sermon series from us. And the reason why it happened is because of that automation factor. We were able to work people, take them on a journey. And you can do that, whether it's an Advent devotional series or you're getting ready to promote Candlelight Communion. You can set up these pre-scheduled emails and Take people on a journey, work them through, raise awareness about an issue, raise awareness about a new ministry that your church is launching. Whatever the case may be, use these to your advantage.
Yeah, very good. So one of the areas that you started to go into there was just, there's two different ways that you can leverage this and use it to your, I'm not going to do it again, use it to your advantage. The first one is getting people from outside the church looking in. And we've talked about that in the first episode. We talked about it in the second episode. It's very awkward to go straight from, you know nothing about us, plan your visit, spend the next 2 hours with us on Sunday. It's a very big jump and it's a little bit awkward. I don't like scheduling things like that. And I'd imagine that people who maybe have a rocky history with the church or no familiarity at all with the church, it will strike them differently. I'm not saying everyone's like me, but I'm just saying it feels weird to me. But if you say plan your visit, and that's the 5th email message that somebody has received in a sequence, maybe they opted in because of something that's going on. Maybe it's election season all the time. Yep. Maybe you have a resource on your website, how to love people through the upcoming election. Okay. And all of a sudden it strikes a narrative. And so people download that and they start understanding that, hey, it's not about right, left. It's not about this candidate or that candidate. It's about all of life is all for Jesus. And so we want to be lambs. We don't want to be ostriches sticking our head in the sand. We don't want to be giraffes being above everyone. We're not a donkey. We're not a elephant, but we want to be lambs just like Jesus was. And all of a sudden you've got this very powerful illustration and you've spoken to something that's very hot, very relevant to somebody who was just looking for a little bit of insight into what am I supposed to make of faith and this election season. Well, then by the time email 5 comes around and you're saying, hey, we'd love to have you join us, come plan your visit. It's done out of relationship. But what you've done in those emails is you have built momentum. And now there is inertia. There is a force that's pushing them towards you as opposed to you trying to have to pull them towards you. So I think that's the first is in the instance of the visitor. But then let's go the other side. And let's say we've talked about baptism in past episodes. Let's talk about baptism again. Let's say that during your next baptism, you put up on the screen and you said, hey, we're excited to celebrate baptisms today. We're so glad that you're here. Here's how we celebrate. They're going to go down in the trough. They're going to come up. We're going to clap. Here's why we're doing that. Here's why we're celebrating. And if you're curious as to whether baptism is a good fit for you or not, there's a QR code up on the screen. We would love to share that with you. And so now you've got people in your church, already in your church, bought in to some extent because they're there. Now they're downloading it, but every single person who gave you their name and their email address to get that resource has just indicated to you, I'm curious.
I have questions.
And now you've got 4 emails that go out over the 4 next week. I think I've used this example before, but we'll hit it again. You've got 4 emails that go out educating them on what baptism is, why it's important, is it right for them, and what to do next.
Yeah, schedule. Be a part of our upcoming baptism service. Right?
Exactly.
I would be willing to bet that your baptism rates double or triple.
Yeah.
If you have this strategy in place and you're committed to it.
You don't have to leverage that just for a free resource on your website or just for baptism. Let's think through Christmas. Let's think through Easter. Let's think through VBS. Let's think through volunteer recruiting. Instead of just saying, hey, volunteer Sunday is this Sunday, get signed up. What if you had a sequence of 3, maybe 4 messages that go out that show how volunteers have been the backbone of the stories that have been birthed out of your church of life change. And it all comes back to somebody saying yes to volunteer. All of a sudden, you've built a case, you've generated momentum, and you've got leverage. You have something more than just an appeal for someone to do something. I'm getting like on my soapbox a little bit here.
And no, I feel you. I think it's, yeah. I mean, you talked about highlighting volunteer ministry. I've often said, hey, the hardest place to get volunteers is the nursery and the stage crew. Like if you're a church plant, the trailer crew, basically unloading and loading. Well, highlight, set up, create some emails that are in a sequence. They're pre-scheduled to go out and highlight the heroes of your church volunteers. And everybody wants to be a hero. And if you make those people a hero, they will want to be close to the other heroes, and they'll sign up. They're more likely to sign up to be on the trailer team or on the nursery team because you've said, hey, these people are important, and everyone wants to be a hero. Everyone wants to be important. And so I think that's the power of doing that. The other thing you mentioned was Easter, and it made me think of something. We put all our eggs in this Easter basket, pun intended, right? From like a resources standpoint, energy, focus. And then we get to Easter Sunday and your team is tired. You're tired, Pastor. Everyone's tired. And in our denomination, they always do what they call district council. And it was always the week after Easter, and it always drove me crazy because I was like, guys, like the next Sunday is so important and everyone is on vacation. I understand you're tired. So what you can do is you can work on all the Easter follow-up sequences for weeks. Let's say you want to send 2 emails out per week for the next 4 weeks after Easter to new guests. Right? You want to share a little bit about the history of the church, the story of the church. Maybe you're able to get into it just a tiny bit on Easter, but there's really so much richness there to your church's story. You could share that in emails. Work on all that before Easter. Pre-schedule it out so that you can take a legitimate vacation after Easter and still find effectiveness the following Sundays.
And then use it again the next year.
Yes.
So the thing that I want to end this conversation with, but which, by the way, there really is so much more that could be said about this. And if you were here right now with us sitting in person, number one, that would be a lot of fun. But number two, we would keep the conversation going, and there might be some questions you would ask. There might be some ideas we'd throw out. There's be some questions we would ask of you. But if you want to take the conversation one step further right now, I want to invite you to go to frontdoor.church, and I want you to sign up for a free trial. If it doesn't wind up being for you, that's fine. But here's what I want you to see. At frontdoor.church, we have actually taken the process of automating emails and we've made it very simple. You select a resource. Well, tell me exactly how. Select a resource and then
landing page
where
they can opt in,
build the landing page, and then customize the emails. That's it. And what you can see in that third step of customize the emails is what a potential sequence of emails could look like. Now, I would invite you to go ahead and put that out on your Facebook page. You've gone through the work. It's going to take you about 5 minutes. Put it out on your Facebook page and see what type of a response you get for the resource you selected. But at the very least, you get to see what 3, maybe 4 or 5 emails could look like once you have reached out and connected with somebody on their level with something they're interested in, and what that digital follow-up looked like. Because one of the things that I realized when we sent out the Typeform, when we sent out a survey using our Typeform account asking pastors about follow-up, is the majority of churches had a follow-up, but the follow-up only took place after someone had attended. What we're saying is, let's move the front door way, way in front of the actual building. But what does follow-up look like at that point? And this is what it looks like, the front door resource and the emails that go
Follow-up is contextualized to how the relationship was started.
Yep. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Talking about email is a lot of fun. It could be very frustrating, so don't feel like you're alone. As I've already said, you can reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you. In upcoming episodes, we're talking charitable giving. We're talking about
events, how to promote a big event.
Promote big events. I'm really excited about that one. One of the churches that I was at, we were really, really good at hosting big events. And so I'm really excited to talk about that. And if there's anything you'd like for us to talk about, be sure and let us know, but we will check it out. We'll check out with you next time. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen and leave a rating and review. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.